This video is sponsored by the Cubamajig Series 2 Kickstarter campaign. Wizards of the Coast has just dropped a new batch of Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoilers, and we have a range of interesting things to look at, including a brand new version of Wrenn and 6, who is now dubbed Wrenn and 7.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, we are here for one of the funnest things to do, and that is to talk about new Magic cards. Now, Innistrad's Midnight Hunt isn't set to come out for well over a month from now. However, Wizards of the Coast came out and dropped an early batch of teasers on us because we're constantly in a cycle of hype. But that actually works for me. I'm fine with getting all hyped up about cards. Looking at this right here, Wrenn and 7 has my mind wondering, are we finally going to be getting a nice in-depth look at the backstory of this character, right? Because previously, this was Wrenn and 6, and all we really know about Wrenn is that they're a dryad who merges with different trees. So I guess different forms with different trees that they're in. And this is a mono green version of Wrenn. So Wrenn and 7 is 2 green and 3 for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker with 4 abilities. The first ability is +1. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all land cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Very green feeling ability. The next ability is 0. Put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. That could be pretty crazy depending on how many lands you can feed into your hand. -3. Create a green tree folk creature token with reach, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. So Wrenn is basically raising up tree folk, possibly taking already existing trees and giving them sentience and having them infused with the power of the lands, like however much land access you have. I dig that. And then the -8 is return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. That is just a feel-good ability. Boom. Get every permanent back. Your hand is infinite sized for the rest of the game. And that returning cards from your graveyard also has a green feel. So this is a very, very mono green planeswalker, and it's well put together. I like the artwork. It looks pretty intense with it actually kind of feels like a black card from the nature of the magic that's cascading off the fingertips of the tree folk part of Wrenn and 7. If you were to change that to like a black smoky kind of magic, it would have that menace that goes along with those tree folk claws. This is a pretty intense being overall, and we actually get 2 variations to look at. So this is one that's a little less menacing and a little more Halloween-y. You can see a floating pumpkin with what looks almost like maple leaves etched into it. It's a Canadian floating pumpkin. I mean, all right, the tree folk still does have an intense vibe, but the bodies don't look as separated in this artwork, so it really just makes Wrenn look like they've been packing on the pounds. You know what I'm saying? I think that I like the artwork. I like both the artworks, but I think that I like the previous one a little bit better. Now, let's move on to some more spoiler action. Next card we have to talk about is Infernal Grasp. 1 black and 1 for an instant. Destroy target creature. You lose 2 life. This is a very, very strong creature destruction spell in my opinion. Like legitimately, you just pay 2 mana, you can destroy any creature. Yes, you do lose 10 life, that would be terrible. You do lose 2 life, which is 10% of your starting life total, but ultimately in most cases, a creature you're going to be taking out with it is going to be worth it. And the only situation where this card becomes unplayable is when you have 2 or less life, because you're just going to lose the game if you play it. But ultimately, this totally will destroy any creature that doesn't have some kind of hexproof or protection. And for 2 mana, that's really, really solid. Like, this is pushing the bounds of uncommon creature destruction power levels, in my opinion. The flavor text says, ancient evils dwell within the burning chasm called the Ashmouth. ever ready to devour those foolish enough to travel alone. Man, Ashmouth as a name is very evocative from a flavor perspective. I dig that. And the artwork, I'm not 100% sure what this is supposed to be. Is this literally somebody who's in the chasm and these crazy demonic hands are literally reaching out of the rocky walls? Not only are they blood red, but they're also covered in these gigantic spiky thorns. This is some intimidating destruction going on. And you can see that not only are they thorny and able to rend with their claws, but you can see this kind of toxic miasma that is flowing upwards as well off of this individual. And it looks like just coming in contact with these claws has immediately started to draw the life force out of the individual. They have a pale kind of visage, very similar to a corpse, but ultimately, this is a strong card. This is definitely going to see standard play. There is no way this card is going to be ignored. Moving on! We've got Join the Dance. I don't know, man. I've seen Wicker Man, not the bees, bro. 1 white, 1 green for a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. It's got flashback for 1 white, 1 green, and 3, so you can play it from your graveyard for that cost and then exile it. The flavor text says, we can go into the dark hand in hand or alone. I know which I prefer. Fair enough, man. I mean, from the perspective of Innistrad, you have werewolves, you have vampires, and they're all preying on mankind. So, as your everyday humans, you don't really stand much of a chance, right? It's very likely that your life is going to be ended. So here you have this kind of crazy revelry, but I find it a bit unsettling. Maybe it's the cultish kind of nature to it, but if you'll recall, when we got that one commander card accidentally spoiled from Midnight Hunt, and if you haven't seen it, then go back and check out that video, we saw that there was this priestess, essentially, like an autumnal witch. And this looks like this feeds more into that concept of autumnal, maybe pagan style worshipping. They have this gigantic monstrosity that I guess is maybe supposed to represent the evils that they face, and they burn it down as an offering. I'm not 100% sure what's going on. The flames I find to be unsettling due to their color. They're an unnatural sort of toxic green looking, and I think that's what makes this less inviting overall. For some reason, when I look at the artwork, I'm like, I don't want to join the dance. I know green-white in this kind of vibe has a communal feel to it, but to me, there's just something about this that I find off-putting. I don't know also if it's the fact that the trees in the background have that kind of, like, look, it's all smoggy and misty, and I don't know, man. There's just something about this that makes me go, no, I don't want to dance, bro. Moving on. We've got Triskaidekaphile. So this is somebody who is really into the number 13. Now, this is something I never thought that I would see in Magic the Gathering. Somebody obsessed with an unlucky number. So, Triskaidekaphile is 1 blue and 1 for a 1/3 human wizard. While it's out, you have no maximum hand size. And can we stop for a moment to appreciate how excellent that feels? Having no restrictions on the number of cards you can have in your hand just ultimately feels amazing. We already saw it on Ren and 6, so maybe we're going to have more of a hand size matters theme running across Innistrad. We'll have to see. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. This is a pretty neat idea. This is an interesting win con. Getting up to 13 cards is no mean feat. And on one hand, this is hard to disrupt because it's difficult to disrupt people's hand size if you're not playing black. If you're playing black, you do have card discard, so you can hit their hand and make them suffer and maybe keep them under the level. But to be able to build up the 13 cards as well, other colors can't mess with it in the same way. However, if the player is not actively playing cards, then they're not really able to do much about what you're doing. And at the end of the day, the Triskaidekaphile is 1/3, and also take a moment to appreciate that's actually 13 printed down there with the slash in the middle, but it's just a 1/3, so it's not a big beefcake. This is not a hard to destroy creature. It doesn't have any kind of inherent protection or anything going on in that regard. It does have the ability pay 4 mana, draw a card, which isn't too shabby, right? I mean, that's going to help move you along to your 13 cards, but seriously, it's going to take a crazy amount of mana. Even if you had 7 cards in your hand when you put this, when you put this wizard out, then you still have to draw an additional 6 more cards, which is going to take you either 6 more turns or 3 more turns of card draw plus an additional 12 mana of pumping to draw more. So it definitely does feel like this isn't going to be as easy a hoop to jump through as it first appears. The flavor text says she's always willing to lend a hand, it just won't be her own. So I'm guessing that all of these different jars that are arrayed here have human hands in them. Is that what's going on? Because that is pretty off-putting. But it does fall into the wizard aspect from Innistrad because they have the whole blue-black necromancer raising the dead style combination setups. So in the background, you can see what looks like there's 13 of these jars, and then they're holding one. I wish that it was actually one less jar, right? Because there's 6 on the one side, there's 7 on the other side, which gives you your 13, and they're holding the 14th one. Maybe like they're just going to smash it because it's like, I don't like having this many jars of hands. I'm not 100% sure, but either way, it's a very odd piece of artwork. You have this crazy clockwork machinery in the background. You have these giant chains whipping around and a massive collection of hands. And I mean, I'll say this wizard definitely looks like an absolute maniac. Kind of looks like an escaped Izzet with that armor though, but whatever. I mean, this is definitely an Innistrad vibe. Now I've said enough about this. Let's move on to the next card. The next card we have is Champion of the Perished. This is 1 black for a 1/1 zombie. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of the Perished. Oh, it's Champion of the Perished. Champion of the Parish was the same thing, basically. It was 1 white for a 1/1 that was whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of the Parish. This is such a fun play on that. That is so absolutely cool. The flavor text says he rose from the graph for every cobbler, tanner, and fool who'd been slaughtered in the parish, and they rose and shambled after him. This is a champion of the parish who's gone past the bonds of death to come back to represent that, like, they still care about the same people. They started out caring about the humans, trying to defend them in what is ultimately going to be a battle that is not going to work out, right? Like, you're humans against werewolves and zombies. You're doomed. It doesn't matter how beefy you get. So this is one who's raised for the slain of humankind and grows more powerful as they array around him. Like the power, like the bonds of death aren't enough to pull apart the connection that they have with the other humans. That is so cool. And just on like a regular level, anybody who plays zombie decks is probably going to be a huge fan of this guy because he's going to combine well with the number of those different zombies that end up returning from the graveyard, because there's tons of those in this game. So man, this is really cool. I really like this concept, right? I mean, the artwork is pretty intense. This champion definitely looks beefier than 1/1 in the artwork, but that could just because a number of other zombies have shown up and they've drawn in that necrotic communal energy. The idea of a zombie that cares about other zombies because they were humans and cared about, like, normally zombies are dead, shambling, mindless masses. So this speaks to like remembrance, and it makes it more tragic. And the artwork shows all these kind of crows flying off in an ill omen kind of vibe. Dude, this is absolutely awesome. I love this card. Let us move on and see what we have next. Next, we have Consider, which is what I like to do with every new card. 1 blue for an instant that says, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Draw a card. So it's a variation of Scry. This is essentially a different style of Opt. The flavor text says, Ivold gasped in surprise. Either a very strange insect had crawled into one of the lenses, or he was seeing geists at last. Oh, funky. An inventor who's created this helmet with all these different lenses on it that's finally able to see into the realm of the geists. That's all right. I mean, pretty straightforward. Not a super exciting card from a play perspective, just an opt variant. So out of the spoilers we've seen so far, I'd say this is the least impressive, but still not a terrible card and has some fun flavor. And then we've got Play with Fire! 1 red for an instant that says Play with Fire deals 2 damage to any target. If a player is dealt damage this way, scry 1. So it's straight up an upgraded Shock, because Shock is just 1 red, 2 damage to any target. This is literally adding scry in, which is going to be amazing for red decks, because red decks, especially ones that go in real quick, run out of gas fast. So being able to scry to make sure that cards that aren't going to help you head to the bottom of your deck is a great thing for red. The flavor text says, devils find human dwellings to be oppressively cold, dark, and unburnt. I love that. The devil's like, it troubles me how unburnt your home is. I'm gonna set it on fire. And the idea that this little devil here is basically taking these daggers made of pure fire and just whipping them at different targets is pretty awesome. You can see in the background, 2 houses have already been hit. There's a 3rd hit in the process of. You can actually see the streaking power coming out of his hand as he's flung the dagger off in that direction. I picture some kind of ritual where the little devil is able to send all of these daggers flying out all at once. But this is a really cool concept. It's got some great flavor, and it's actually it feels like a fairly playable card in terms of at least standard, right? I could see it with the scry actually getting some love. So those are all the spoiler cards, my friends. Let me know what you think, and I'm going to hand it over to my sponsor. So what exactly is a Cubamajig? Simply put, they are sturdy, reusable boosters that have amazing artwork from some of Magic's best artists. The purpose of a Cubamajig is to store individually your cube draft packs or your sideboard. You could use it for chaos drafts, for leagues, or even to separate your jumpstart cards. The Cubamajig packs hold 15 double-sleeved cards, 20 single-sleeved cards, or 30 unsleeved cards per pack. One of the things that I most enjoy about the Cubamajigs is the way that they seal closed, making sure that they won't cause any damage to the cards inside. Series 2 of Cubamajigs brings some serious improvements. There is a new production method that allows for cleaner seams and stops the packs from bulging outwards. The Cubamajigs now come pre-made, so there's no assembly required. Each set of 10 Cubamajigs now comes with a 400 count box to store them in that can be used separately if you desire. The Kickstarter campaign also features the Potamajig, a bigger box that's designed to hold all of your Cubamajigs. On top of all this, the Kickstarter also features playmats showcasing the amazing artwork from these boxes, tokens with the same art, life pads called Jotamajigs, and also miniature pencils to use with them. There's also a series of sleeves that will feature this artwork, and they even have the original art available for sale. Now that you have all the information that you need, head on over to the Cubamajigs Kickstarter, because this pricing is a limited time offering. You'll find the link to take you there in the description below. My thanks to the Cubamajigs Series 2 Kickstarter project for sponsoring this video.